President Donald Trump says the United States has captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and is now effectively in control of the country, warning that a far larger military strike is ready if needed. In an address, President Trump declared no U.S. troops were killed in the operation and said Washington would run Venezuela until what he called a safe and orderly transition is achieved. Mahalia Joseph Wharton has more.
In the wee hours of Saturday morning, the United States captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and flew him out of the country in a stunning military operation that plucked a sitting leader from office. In his address, President Donald Trump said the U.S. is now effectively in control of the country, warning that a far larger military strike is ready if needed.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela.
The U.S. president also made clear that Washington's involvement would extend beyond the battlefield, outlining plans for American oil giants to take a central role in rebuilding Venezuela's energy sector.
We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country.
He said the U.S. is ready to stage a second and much larger attack if needed.
We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually.
President Trump said the capture was the culmination of months of escalating pressure from his administration on the South American nation.
Our air, land, and sea was used to launch a spectacular assault, and it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas, to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice.
He praised the U.S. military for their work in capturing the Venezuelan president.
This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history.
President Donald Trump announced that Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has been sworn in as the country's new president. He added that she has indicated a readiness to cooperate with the United States in governing the country.
For us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro, and right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn in as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back.
President Maduro and his wife were taken overnight from their home on a military base. According to international reports, both were aboard a U.S. warship on their way to New York, where they will face criminal charges. Mahalia Joseph Wharton.
Tonight, Venezuela.
Hey guys, welcome to Carib 21 Network, Saturday Night Live. And yes, we are talking about the situation with Venezuela, and we knew that this day was eventually going to come, but I don't think anyone expected it this morning. So this morning, roughly about 6 o'clock, I saw the breaking news, and this is just crazy. But I think this has got to be one of the strangest thing that I've ever seen. I don't know if anyone else find this a bit strange that the Americans, they were able to go inside Venezuela, take out the president and his wife, and without any military resistance. Something is just strange about this, because the impression that we got with Venezuela is that the military was ready and people were ready to fight to defend their homeland. But based on the news coming out of Venezuela, the Americans were able to go in, pick up the president and his wife, and based on what we're hearing, no resistance from the Venezuelan military. And what's even more crazy is that the vice president was sworn in like just hours after President Maduro was taken out of Venezuela. So I don't know, someone got some money or something, but this is very strange, because we have seen activity like this before. We saw it in Grenada with the Morris Bishop situation, and even small Grenada without without any sense of military at that time, like a military of less than 500 in Grenada at the time in 1983, and the Grenadian military and the Cubans that were there at the airport, they put up a resistance for hours. So to go into Venezuela with hundreds of thousands of military soldiers without any type of resistance, I think, I think money run. Someone got some money to give the go ahead when to come in and when to get him. And just following what is going on in Venezuela, and we see people out shopping just like a regular day in Venezuela. So I think that is strange. And similar thing to what happened in Panama, there was also a resistance in Panama when the Americans went in to get what's his name in Panama back in the 80s. So this is just strange. Maybe it's the best thing to happen, because based on most people expectation is that it would have been like a serious war, and we were concerned about the impact that it would have on Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela, and if the military would retaliate. So now that is not happening, I guess this is a good ending for everyone, because based on what we're seeing now, I doubt if Trinidad and Tobago, they're going to have to be on any high alert. I doubt if Guyana is going to be on any high alert. But it is just, as I said, it's just strange. But one thing I would say is that, I believe that this is a teachable moment for us. This is a teachable moment, because a lot of time we hear the word democracy, and we hear the Americans use it a lot. And now we're seeing that there's what Donald Trump is clearly telling us is that there's no such thing as a democracy unless the Americans decide, because Donald Trump clearly came out and said, look, we are going to run the country. Like, no ifs and buts about it. The Americans are going to run the country. That is what Donald Trump said. It reminds me of 1905, when the Americans took over Cuba, when they took over Haiti after the revolution, when they occupied it. It is the same thing, history repeating itself. So, there's no democracy. And one thing I would say about the time that we're living in now, where maybe I should use, I don't know if it's a good word, but appreciate the transparency of Donald Trump. That when we saw President Obama went to get Muammar Gaddafi, people were with Obama until years after they realized that, look, they went in and they took out someone who just wanted Africa to be better. And so a lot of stuff, when we saw the Iraq war, weapons of mass destruction, it was years after people realize that, look, the Americans went in, they spent billions of dollars, a lot of people lost their life, and there was no weapon of mass destruction. With this now, Donald Trump is telling you everything upfront before it happened. We are going into Venezuela. We want the oil. Donald Trump is telling you, like, the American companies were there back in the 2000s, in the 90s. Hugo Chavez wanted them out, got them out, and Donald Trump clearly came and said, this is what we're going for. You know, in between that, they use this whole thing about narco-terrorists and all of that. But yet still, in the invasion last night, you heard nothing about any drug site being hit, only military base, and they just went in and got the president and out. So it is, yes, this is just crazy, but it is going to be very interesting to see the future, what is going to happen. And I think, you know, agree with him or not, if this, well, getting out Maduro was very successful, if they are able to stabilize Venezuela, if Venezuela does not become another Haiti, Donald Trump is going to be praised for a long time, because they're going to say Donald Trump went in, took out a dictator, and was able to stabilize Venezuela. So, you know, the story is still being written. We don't know what is going to happen. Based on what I'm seeing coming out of Venezuela now, people are going about their normal life. The only thing is that we saw people in Venezuela rushing to the gas station, rushing to the grocery store to stock up on stuff. But we saw the vice president being sworn in as president. We saw the head of the military sitting down calm as if nothing happened. So this is just weird. But let me continue. So Maduro is in New York right now, and he's going to be charged. And as I said, this is just interesting. But this is more coming out of the US this evening, that Maduro is now in America, and him and his wife, they're going to face charges.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is in New York in federal custody hours after a surprise early morning U.S. military raid on his compound in Caracas.
Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela.
The Pentagon says President Trump gave the order to arrest Maduro just before 11 Friday night. Troops from 20 military bases and 150 U.S. aircraft took part in the mission, which saw an elite strike force arrive at Maduro's compound around 1 this morning.
This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years.
The president says with Maduro deposed, the U.S. will run Venezuela indefinitely.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition.
Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves.
We're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground, and that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country.
Venezuelans around the world taking to the streets to celebrate the end of Maduro's reign.
Everybody's just happy because everybody has been waiting for democracy and change in Venezuela.
But on Capitol Hill, congressional Democrats and some Republicans are demanding answers from the Trump administration about why they were kept in the dark. Many calling the military mission illegal.
Now they're saying they were going to occupy a foreign country, we're going to run it from the United States, and that we're going to steal their oil. In what world did this administration get any of that permission ever for them to do that?
Secretary of State Marco Rubio said briefing Congress before the attack would have jeopardized the mission to get Maduro. Chris Pallone, NBC News.
Missiles lighting up the sky in Venezuela overnight Saturday as the U.S. launched strikes into the country's capital city of Caracas in a stunning attack.
it was clear that something was happening, and it was big because of the detonations that we heard.
Mary Mena, a CNN producer located in Caracas, says the attack led to confusion and fear.
Early today,
President Donald Trump announcing the attack on Truth Social and said President Nicolas Maduro and his wife were captured. Then later sharing this photo of Maduro in U.S. custody.
this was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might.
Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, face multiple drug and weapons charges, including narco-terrorism conspiracy.
So there's a lot of questions that still unanswered for me, and only time will tell, but this is going to be a very interesting year. 2026 is going to be very interesting. And last week, I was talking about this situation, and personally, what I said last week, and I still believe it, is that I don't believe that the US military, I don't think they're going to leave the Caribbean Sea. I doubt it. I have a strong feeling because Marco Rubio is the architect of this. You know, people think that this is all about Donald Trump, but this is all Marco Rubio. Signature is all over this. And I just have this feeling that the US military, they are going to stay in the Caribbean Sea, and they are going to look at this as a big success, being able to go into Venezuela and to get out the president and his wife. And they are going to be turning their attention to Cuba next, because I believe that Cuba, though might not be as rich as Venezuela in terms of oil reserve, we don't know. It is possible that Cuba might have oil reserve that nobody knows about. But I just believe that, especially with Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, they have this desire to get their hands back on Cuba. And I believe that Donald Trump, this administration they're going to stay in the Caribbean Sea, and they are going to turn their attention on Cuba next. And I don't know if Cuba would be as easy as what we have seen taking place with Venezuela, you know, because the Americans and the Cubans have been at it for a while, and I don't know if it's going to be as easy, because the Cuban military seem more serious based on what their history. So I hope I'm wrong, but I believe that is going to be their attention. They're not going to leave the Caribbean Sea right now. That military, they're not going to leave the Caribbean Sea. So that is, I think, something to watch out for 2026. Are they going to go after Cuba? And one of the things that I thought about also, when we have been covering this for the past, 4 months or so, if the US government is successful taking over Venezuela, if Corina Machado becomes the president of Venezuela, why would the Americans need Trinidad and Tobago? That is something that I thought about a few months ago, because Venezuela have the biggest oil reserve in the world. Trinidad, not much right now. Trinidad have the infrastructure, and they were ready to do the Dragon deal, where to put the pipeline from Trinidad, run the line from Trinidad into Venezuela for the Dragon deal. But if the American government has full control of Venezuela, full control of all the oil, why would they need Trinidad and Tobago? So this is something else that I'm going to be watching for 2026. Are we going to see a situation where the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, she went all out for Donald Trump and supported, I think she was his number one supporter in terms of this conflict with Venezuela. What if she end up getting nothing out of this deal, because I think one of the things that she would be happy to be able to sign the Dragon deal and to be able to start, a kickstart again to the Trinidadian oil economy. But if, as I said, if the oil companies, as Donald Trump say, if they're going to go back into Venezuela and spend billions of dollars, why would they need Trinidad and Tobago if they have full access to the oil in Venezuela? So is the Dragon deal going to be back on the table? Or are the Americans going to say to Trinidad, look, we don't need you? So that is something to look out for in 2026. So let's continue.
Conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. Venezuelans in South Florida celebrating the news of Maduro's capture. This incident follows weeks of rising tension between the U.S. and Venezuela. For months, the Trump administration has been targeting alleged drug boats coming from Venezuela and what it has called its crackdown on global drug trafficking. Maduro has denied involvement. While Maduro was seen by many as an authoritarian leader who violated human rights, the action to capture him and his wife has raised serious concerns about the U.S. violating international law.
The strikes overall and the activity in the sovereign territory of another country will certainly raise criticism from some parts of Congress, within our own government, and certainly from the international community.
Venezuela leaders say they have requested an urgent meeting with the United Nations Security Council in response to the attack. I'm Jen Sullivan reporting.
Yes, so I agree. I don't think the Trinidad government, they're going to benefit from this thing. I think, Donald Trump is a businessman first. And I believe, you're going to see like Eric Trump and Ivanka Trump, all of them, all of a sudden, they're going to be in the oil business. They're going to have own major share in some of these oil companies. And those oil companies are going to go right back in Venezuela. So yes, it as I said, it's going to be very interesting to see, because the Dragon deal is the deal that the Trinidadian government from Dr. Keith Rowley invested millions of dollars in getting that deal. And as I said, why would they need them now when they have access to the oil? And what is going to be very interesting also with the geopolitics is that Venezuelan oil, 72% of it was going to China and only 18% going to the United States of America. So if Donald Trump is serious about them running Venezuela, what is going to happen to China? Is this going to escalate tensions with the US and China? Is this going to lead to the two powerhouse facing off? Because 72%, that's a lot of oil. And Venezuela is the number one, have the most oil in the entire world. So it's not like China can just go and replace with Saudi Arabia and Iraq. They're still going to need oil. And is the American government going to use that as leverage? And could that escalate things between the Americans and the Chinese government? And also, the last time we checked, between Russia and China had billions of dollars investment in Venezuela in their oil infrastructure. Even recently, we heard that I think it was China invested $60 million or something like that, some new investment. So what is going to happen to those money? Can the American government go into Venezuela and take Russian and Chinese own asset from Venezuela? And is that going to cause another, conflict between, the three most powerful countries in the world that has, their hand in Venezuela. It's going to be very, very interested. 2026 is going to be very interesting. And when the Americans go in and they do this now, how can they look tomorrow now and tell Putin that you cannot get back Ukraine? Ukraine is a sovereign country, and you can't go and invade them when America went ahead, invaded a sovereign country, took out a leader. I'm sure, Putin probably sitting there and thinking that, maybe that's what I should do. Maybe I should go get Zelensky, So it is going to be very interesting to see the dynamic going forward. But for the sake of the Caribbean, I hope this is it. I hope we don't see any guerrilla warfare going on in Venezuela. I hope the military don't go rogue and become like Haiti, because Venezuela, the thing with Venezuela is that they have more weapons than Haiti. They have missiles and they have a lot of firepower. And Venezuela going rogue would be a much different story from a Haiti, because Haiti, they don't have the weaponry that Venezuela have. So for the sake of the Caribbean, I hope that is not the case, and that they probably sell out Maduro, and the vice president probably had the military under control and tell him not to to fire or to resist or anything, just stand down. I hope that is what's really happening, because for the sake of Trinidad and Tobago, for the sake of Guyana, I hope the peace remains in the Caribbean.
Well, first of all, as I was listening to President Donald Trump, what he was saying about 150 airplanes participating, helicopters, it was remarkable how that appears to be what really happened. Because if I remember what happened during the early hours of the day, it was something like that, like I hear multiple planes and helicopters and a rumbling loud sound in Caracas for about 45 minutes. The reaction, there's no immediate reaction from Venezuelan government officials. We heard from them early in the morning. We haven't seen them because they have appeared on national television over the phone, but not in presence. The state channel keeps sending a message of tranquility, of peace, showing images of the country in peace, and also saying that some government supporters are gathering in areas where Nicolás Maduro is receiving support, like the west of the city around the presidential palace in Caracas. So far, most people have decided to remain at home or to buy some food in those places that are still open, like pharmacies or supermarket. But the majority of Venezuelans are following the news through international channels like CNN. The flow of information usually keeps running easily and more freely through international TV stations in Venezuela. And we need to remember there are more than 8 million Venezuelans abroad living in outside of the country that have migrated, and they have many family members calling them and telling them what they are seeing through international channels.
Guys, history is being made in real time. There are hundreds of people here in El Arepaso, which, like you said, has been the mecca for Venezuelans speaking out against injustices in their country for decades. I'm here joined by Edgar. Edgar has been here since he was 11 years old, born and raised in Venezuela, out here since early this morning. Tell me, why did you want to be out here?
Well, okay, before I begin, I just want to talk to you, America, and I hope you have your coffee when I tell you this, but these are great news. All eyes on Venezuela. These are historical news. This is history in the making. I mean, my chest, it feels like it's gonna explode with joy, because before I was even born, there have been struggles. My family has been fighting for so many years before I was even here. They have told me about it. They told me about a time where democracy existed, and now I can finally look forward to that. And that's just everything that I can ask for. And I just want to tell you people, America, Venezuelans are good people. The greatest people that I know, I can vouch for them. We are good. We are working hard, and this is President Donald Trump and Maria Corina Machado just created an opportunity for us to begin working harder than ever, because that's what we have always been doing. But now we will be working in our country. But we also have worked so hard here in the United States to build so much things. And I just want to thank you, America. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to work.
There's a lot of pride that comes with Venezuelans. He actually wore this flag just like this for his college graduation in the University of Florida, just to show you how much love there is for this country that has gone through so much for so long. Being here has been incredible. People are dancing, people are cheering, and we've been here so many times, Christian, like you said in the past, when there have been so many issues, and they would cheer, "Si se puede, si se puede." Now they're cheering, "Si se pudo." Yes, we did it. It happened. What do you think now this means for Venezuela, for family back home, how people can move forward after this?
Well, that's where the uncertainty comes. I plead America.
One of the interesting thing I'm also watching is the reaction of Venezuelans in the diaspora. And, watching their reaction, I'm like, you know what? I think I just need to be on the sideline and not think too much or say too much, because unless they are showing selective areas and selective Venezuelan, but all the images that I've seen so far in the diaspora, Venezuelans are out celebrating. And yes, so it is just a bit odd that, people across the world, they're looking at this. We are here looking and we are saying that Venezuela sovereignty was challenged, and the American government did something illegal. They went in and they took out, a president, even though Congress didn't even know about it. And what America did was illegal. But at the same time, we see the Venezuelan people celebrating. So it is just a bit odd. And, seeing those celebrations, I'm like, you know what? Let me just reserve my thought about all of this and just to watch everything play out and see if Venezuela is going to go back to what it was before. Because in 2001, I think Venezuela was ranked the happiest country in Latin America. I know people from there, I work with people from there that said, like, back in the 70s, the 60s, you go to the gas station and you pump gas and it's cheaper than water. Like, to fill your tank is cheaper than getting a case of water back in those days. And people were living good. A lot of people from the Caribbean went to Venezuela after the abolition of slavery and all of that, when the Caribbean was just nothing. A lot of people from Jamaica, people from Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a lot of Caribbean people went to Venezuela to earn a living way before America started accepting Caribbean people in America. Caribbean people used to go to Venezuela. And even Jamaica's first black millionaire made his money in Venezuela back in those days. The guy that built Devon House, where we are famous Jamaican Devon House ice cream, he went to Venezuela to make his money. A lot of Caribbean nationals also went to Cuba. People don't know that Bustamante lived in Cuba for about 40 years before he went back to Jamaica and became Jamaica's first prime minister. Trinidad and Tobago, as I said, a lot of people that I know from Trinidad and Tobago, they have ancestry in Venezuela. People from St. Vincent and the Grenadines also. So Venezuela has been a part of, I think even before America, Venezuela was there. So I really hope that they can get back to that stage. And I really hope that this is not, they're able to at least control some of the wealth from their oil, from their natural resources. And one of the other thing too that I wanted to talk about is Guyana. What does this mean for Guyana? What does this mean for the Essequibo region? If the Americans in charge of Venezuela now, the Guyana Venezuela thing is in court. It's been in court for a while, challenging for the Essequibo region. Chavez to Maduro wanted this case to be wrapped up with so they can control that region right in between Guyana and Venezuela that is said to have a lot of natural resources also. So with the Americans in charge now, is the court ruling going to be different? Is this going to go, because based on what we have seen so far with the British, the UK government, the American government siding with Guyana, now that the Americans have control of Venezuela, are they still going to side with Guyana, or it is going to swing back to Venezuela? And if Venezuela, gain access to the Essequibo region, is that going to be for the Americans to, to get the oil from it? So all of these things that we have to watch in 2026, but 2026, first week in 2026, and it is going to be a very, very interesting year so far. And, I hope for the sake of the world that we're not heading close to World War III, because now we see even China they're conducting war games to possibly go back to take Taiwan. And I believe that seeing what happened with Venezuela and America, that might empower them and say like, oh, you go in and you take over a sovereign country. We're just going to go back to reclaim, what is originally ours for like thousands of years. So this 2026 might turn out to be a very interesting year, but I hope for the sake of the world that we're not going to get involved in more wars and, heading into World War III.
Again, I plead for you for mercy for us Venezuelans. People such as me, I have been here almost my whole life, all of my youth. And I do believe that the future of Venezuelans is in Venezuela. But I also think that some of us and some people here also want to continue working here in the United States, building a beautiful nation. Doral. I mean, this is the stronghold of Venezuelans, and it's a beautiful city. I recommend everybody to come here to Doral. I recommend everybody, if you're Venezuelan, everyone, come down here to El Arepaso. Yes, yeah, come celebrate with us. We love everybody because you, America, has loved us so much, so much. Thank you, America.
Edgar, thank you so much for sharing those sentiments. Guys, this is something that I find really interesting here. Everyone here, American, Venezuelan, have said they're so happy for the freedom that they experience here, and they just hope that freedom translates into their home country, Venezuela. All we've heard was freedom, freedom, freedom. Yes, we did it. Now we can continue to move forward. By no means are any of them saying now comes the easy part. Certainly the hard parts are on the way, but they're saying now is finally a step in the right direction that they've all been waiting for so long. I want to give you a little bit more of a scene setter here, guys. Look, people with flags, holding them up, holding them high. Hundreds of people here. Cars, playing music, everyone here dancing. It really is wonderful to see so many people coming together. There are a lot of emotions behind this. I mean, they're not just cheering because of what just happened today. This comes from generations upon generations of stories of struggle, stories of hurt, stories also of hope for a better country and a better life for their family in Venezuela. Since I've been here, I've seen countless people FaceTiming their family members from Venezuela, checking off on them. Like we said, these strikes, we still don't know if there have been any casualties. We have had a lot of people here checking up on their family. Thankfully, all of the FaceTimes have been answered. A lot of things we still do not know. But overall here, the sentiment is hope, like you said.
Isn't that interesting though, that they're in the street dancing without even knowing if a family member was casualty to the bombing that took place. And we haven't heard anything about the bombing in terms of how many life was lost, because there was, the last time I heard, it was over 100 between fighter jet, drone, helicopter going into Venezuela, and hundreds of bombs fell. So we haven't heard anything yet, but I think it would be strange for so much bombing without any casualty. And yeah, it is interesting that they're in the street dancing, not knowing if their loved ones were injured or anything like that. And said that 8 million Venezuelan left Venezuela in the past 10 to 15 years since the country's been destabilized. And one of the things I'm always confused about is that even the Cubans that leave Cuba, the Venezuelans, they know that in more recent time, the Venezuelans, they were living in a good country. They were living in a productive country before the sanctions. And it seemed like the Venezuelans outside of Venezuela are more upset with their government than the government that sanctioned their country, because Obama was the first president that started the sanction on Venezuela. So it is just interesting that you are in a country, you're in America or wherever in the diaspora Venezuelans are living outside of Venezuela. They know that before the confrontation between Chavez and the American government, and Chavez decided that he wanted to nationalize oil in Venezuela, and the sanctions started. The sanction is what crippled Venezuela. It's not that, when you hear the conversation, they make it seem like Venezuela is struggling because the government is corrupt and they're not using the oil money on the people. But the sanctions that the American government sanctioned, that is what really crippled the economy, why we see so much Venezuelans in Trinidad and Tobago, so many in the United States of America. So I find that very interesting that they don't, when you hear the story, you don't really hear about the impact that the sanction had on the country. And even Venezuelans themselves in the diaspora seem to be more upset with their local politician than the politicians across North America and Europe that put sanction on Venezuela itself, that pretty much cripple the economy. So I find that very interesting.
We covered this in the past. A lot of times we've heard people cheer "Si se puede," and now they're saying "Si se pudo." Now we did it, guys.
Gabby, it's so loud behind you that we actually we can hear you, but we can't hear you as clearly as we could maybe a half hour ago when we see the jubilation, right? The joy behind you of people that have been sitting on the edge of their seats waiting for this moment. Still unclear, where things will go, if there in fact will be a regime change. And I don't want to sound negative because by all indication, that is where we're going, but there's a lot of question, a lot of concern. You see a lot of celebration behind you, but of course in Caracas, Venezuela, there is a lot of fear of what happens next.
Okay, so yeah, so that is it. What is next for Venezuela? Regime change, I think that's obvious already, even though the vice president was sworn in as president. I know that elections, I think this year was supposed to be the election in Venezuela. And can we say that we're going to have like a free and fair election without interference from, the Trump administration in this election when the election is held, whenever it's been held this year? And if Corina Machado, if she win the election, what is that going to be like for the people of Venezuela? Are the Venezuelans comfortable with her becoming the next president of Venezuela? Because when we talk about Corina Machado, people see her as someone that will just come in and just give away the resources to the American government, and the Venezuelan people will get nothing. So it is going to be very interesting to see if, she's just going to walk right into the presidency, or she's going to be challenged, and how is that going to be? So that is going to be very interesting. So I'm just going to leave it right there. But guys, we continue to follow this story coming out of Venezuela with the Venezuelan President Maduro, and his wife in custody, and what is going to happen to those two. Are they going to spend the rest of their life in prison? Would the American government release them to Russia? I guess that is something that we're going to have to wait and see. But I'm just going to leave it right here. So guys, remember to, subscribe and turn on your notifications, so whenever we go live on Saturdays, that you will get the notification when we go live. So I'm going to leave it right here. So thank you again for watching, and have a good night.